The golden invitation. The envelope felt heavier than it should have. Vanessa Morales ran her finger across the gold-embossed lettering, admiring how the afternoon sunlight caught the raised script of her and Ethan's names. 3 months until their wedding, and the invitations were finally ready to be sent. She had insisted on reviewing the guest list one final time before they were sealed. Just being thorough, she told Ethan with a smile when he teased her about her perfectionism. But perfectionism wasn't what made her pause when she saw the name. Rebecca Winters scrawled in Ethan's distinctive handwriting at the bottom of the list. Rebecca, the ex-girlfriend Ethan occasionally mentioned in passing conversations. The brilliant architect who had taught him so much about design. The woman who, according to the bits and pieces Vanessa had gathered over their 3-year relationship, had broken Ethan's heart before he met Vanessa. Ethan, Vanessa called out, her voice steady despite the sudden tightness in her chest. Can you come here for a second? Ethan appeared from their home office, his dark hair slightly disheveled from running his hands through it while working, a habit Vanessa found endearing. Today, however, she was too distracted to appreciate it. What's up, babe? He smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling in that way that had first attracted her to him at their mutual friend Javier's gallery opening. I'm looking at the guest list. Vanessa held up the paper. You added Rebecca? Ethan's expression shifted almost imperceptibly, a slight tension in his jaw that might have gone unnoticed by someone who hadn't studied his face for 3 years. Yeah, I thought I mentioned that. His tone was casual as he leaned against the doorframe. We've stayed friends. She's been supportive of my career, and honestly, it would be weird not to invite her. You never mentioned you were still in touch with her, Vanessa said, setting the list down on the coffee table. The manila envelope of invitations sat beside it, suddenly looking like a Pandora's box she wished she hadn't opened. We're not close or anything, Ethan said with a dismissive wave. We exchange emails about industry stuff, grab coffee maybe once a year. It's nothing. If it's nothing, why invite her to our wedding? Vanessa kept her tone neutral, fighting against the defensiveness rising within her. Ethan sighed, crossing the room to sit beside her on the sofa. Look, Rebecca was an important part of my life for a while. We didn't work out romantically, but we respect each other. Having her there would feel like, I don't know, closing a chapter properly. Vanessa studied his face, searching for signs that this meant more than he was letting on. But Ethan's expression was open, his green eyes holding hers steadily. I should have mentioned it, he conceded. But honestly, I didn't think it would be a big deal. You're secure enough not to worry about an ex, right? And besides, she's bringing her boyfriend. They've been together for like 2 years now. The knot in Vanessa's stomach loosened slightly. She nodded slowly, although something still felt off. I trust you, she said finally. I just wish you'd told me sooner. Ethan kissed her forehead. Nothing to tell, really. She's just someone from my past who wishes us well. He stood up, stretching. Now, should we finish these invitations or order takeout first? I'm starving. The moment passed, but that night, as Vanessa lay awake beside Ethan's sleeping form, her thoughts kept returning to Rebecca Winters. A quick social media search had revealed a striking woman with intelligent eyes and an impressive resume. What bothered Vanessa wasn't jealousy, it was the feeling that there was something Ethan wasn't saying, what she didn't. No, then, was that an invitation meant for closure would instead open doors to truths she wasn't prepared to face, truths that would ultimately change the course of her carefully planned future. Whispers and warnings. The weeks following the invitation discovery passed in a blur of wedding preparations. Vanessa threw herself into finalizing details, sampling cakes, confirming floral arrangements, and coordinating with their venue, the historic Bellamy estate overlooking the coast. Yet beneath her efficient exterior, questions about Rebecca Winters lingered. It wasn't until the engagement party that these questions gained new urgency. The celebration, hosted at Ethan's parents' sprawling suburban home, brought together friends and family from both sides. Vanessa was chatting with her maid of honor, Priya, when she overheard a conversation that made her freeze mid-sentence. Can't believe Rebecca's coming to the wedding, a woman's voice said from behind a decorative pillar. After everything that happened. Ethan always had a blind spot where she's concerned, replied another voice, one Vanessa recognized as belonging to Dominic, Ethan's college roommate. Vanessa excused herself from Priya and drifted casually toward the voices, pretending to admire a nearby arrangement of photographs. "Does Vanessa know?" the woman asked, lowering her voice. "I doubt it," Dominic responded. "Ethan's not exactly forthcoming about, 'Oh, Vanessa!'" His expression shifted abruptly when he spotted her. "Great party. Your future in-laws really went all out." The woman beside him, Olivia, Ethan's cousin, smiled nervously. "Congratulations again. I was just telling Dom how beautiful you look tonight." The forced brightness in their tones only intensified Vanessa's suspicion. "Thank you," she said. "I couldn't help overhearing Rebecca's name." "You know her well?" An uncomfortable silence followed. Dominic swirled his drink, ice clinking against glass. "We all hung out in the same circles back in the day," he finally said. "Ancient history now." "Not that ancient," Olivia murmured, earning a sharp glance from Dominic. Vanessa waited, but neither elaborated. The conversation shifted to safer topics, leaving her with more questions than answers. Later that night, as she helped Ethan's mother gather discarded glasses, the older woman touched her arm gently. "Vanessa, dear, I've been meaning to ask, how are you feeling about everything?" Margaret Palmer's eyes were kind but searching. "The wedding? A little overwhelmed but excited," Vanessa replied. Margaret hesitated. "I meant about Rebecca attending. When Ethan mentioned he'd invited her, well, I was surprised." Vanessa set down the glasses she'd been collecting. "Why surprised?" "Their relationship was complicated," Margaret said carefully. "More so than Ethan probably lets on. I just want to make sure you're comfortable with her being there." "To be honest, I don't know much about their relationship," Vanessa admitted. "Ethan doesn't talk about it." Margaret's expression softened with something resembling concern. "That's probably for the best. The past should stay in the past. Just know that you're the one he chose, dear. That's what matters." The conversation left Vanessa unsettled. That night, she dreamed of standing at the altar while faceless guests whispered secrets she couldn't quite hear. 2 weeks before the wedding, another strange encounter occurred. Vanessa was meeting with their photographer, Theo, to scout locations at the Bellamy estate when her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "We should talk before the wedding. About Ethan, it's important." Rebecca, Vanessa stared at the message, heart pounding. How had Rebecca gotten her number? More importantly, what could be so important? After deliberating, she responded, "What about Ethan?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then reappeared. Finally, "Some things you should know. For your sake." "Coffee tomorrow?" Vanessa agreed to meet at a cafe downtown, telling herself she was merely being pragmatic. Knowledge was power, wasn't it? The following afternoon, she arrived early, selecting a table with a view of the entrance. When Rebecca walked in, tall, elegant, with a confident stride, Vanessa immediately understood what had drawn Ethan to her. What she hadn't expected was the sadness in Rebecca's eyes when she spotted Vanessa. "Thank you for meeting me," Rebecca said, sliding into the chair opposite. "I debated whether to reach out." "Why did you?" Vanessa asked directly. Rebecca sighed. "Because I wish someone had done the same for me." She pulled out her phone, scrolling to find something. "Before I show you this, I want you to know I'm not trying to ruin anything. I just believe you deserve the full picture before you make a lifetime commitment." She placed her phone on the table, screen facing Vanessa. It displayed a text conversation between Rebecca and Ethan dated just 6 months ago. Ethan: "I still think about us sometimes." "What might have been?" Rebecca: "Ethan, you're engaged." "This isn't appropriate." Ethan: "I know. I'm happy with Vanessa, but what we had was special. No one understands me like you did." Rebecca: "You need to stop. This isn't fair to her." Ethan: "You're right. Sorry. Too much wine. Forget I said anything." Vanessa felt the blood drain from her face. "There's more," Rebecca said quietly. "And there's something else you should know about why we really ended things." The wedding day revelation. The morning of her wedding dawned with perfect clarity, both in the cloudless October sky and in Vanessa's mind. After her meeting with Rebecca, she had spent days in turmoil, confronting Ethan about the messages. His explanations had been plausible, a moment of nostalgia, meaningless texts sent during a business trip when he was lonely and had had too much to drink. He'd apologized profusely, promised it meant nothing, and Vanessa, who had built her life around their relationship, chose to believe him. But she hadn't told him about the other revelations, the pattern Rebecca had outlined, complete with evidence that left little room for interpretation. And she hadn't canceled Rebecca's invitation. Some truths, Vanessa had decided, needed witnesses. "You look stunning," whispered Priya, adjusting Vanessa's veil in the bridal suite of the Bellamy estate. Outside, 150 guests were being seated for the ceremony overlooking the ocean. "Is everyone here?" Vanessa asked, her voice steadier than she felt. "Just about. Even the infamous Rebecca," Priya added cautiously. "Are you sure you're okay with her being here? After everything you told me?" Vanessa met her friend's concerned gaze in the mirror. "I'm more than okay with it," she said. "In fact, it's essential." Priya looked puzzled but didn't press further. The wedding coordinator knocked, announcing it was time. Vanessa took a deep breath and followed her down the corridor to where her father waited to walk her down the aisle. The ceremony proceeded like a beautiful dream, or it would have. If Vanessa hadn't been acutely aware of Rebecca sitting in the 8th row, her expression solemn. When the officiant asked if anyone objected to the union, Vanessa found herself holding her breath. But Rebecca remained silent, and the moment passed. "You may kiss the bride," the officiant finally declared, and as Ethan's lips met hers, Vanessa made her decision. The truth wouldn't wait any longer. The reception began in the estate's grand ballroom, where crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over tables adorned with white roses and gold accents. Vanessa moved through the crowd in her gown, accepting congratulations with gracious smiles that didn't quite reach her eyes. She spotted Rebecca at the bar, looking uncomfortable as she sipped champagne. "Thank you for coming," Vanessa said. Approaching her directly, Rebecca looked startled. "I almost didn't. After our talk, I thought you might rescind the invitation. On the contrary, I wanted you here." Vanessa lowered her voice. "Did you bring the documents I asked for?" Rebecca nodded, discreetly touching her clutch. "Are you sure about this? Today of all days? What better time for the truth?" Vanessa said, her resolve hardening. "The photographs, the messages to those other women while you were together, the same pattern he started with me. I need to see everything." They slipped away to a small library adjacent to the ballroom. There, Rebecca produced a manila envelope. "I kept everything," she said. Not out of bitterness, but as a reminder never to ignore red flags again. The evidence was damning. Screenshots of inappropriate conversations with multiple women spanning years, including some that overlapped with the early months of Ethan and Vanessa's relationship. Most devastating was a series of messages to a woman named Juliana, sent just weeks before he proposed to Vanessa, making promises disturbingly similar to those he'd made to his now wife. "He has a pattern," Rebecca explained gently. "He keeps backups, emotional safety nets. When we were together, there were others. When he sensed I was pulling away, he accelerated his pursuit of you. I only discovered the extent of it after we'd broken up." Vanessa sat perfectly still, the truth settling around her like a heavy cloak. "Thank you," she said finally, "for being brave enough to show me. What will you do?" Rebecca asked. Vanessa stood, smoothing her dress with steady hands. "Exactly what needs to be done. Starting with the toast I'm about to give." When Vanessa returned to the reception, the dinner was concluding. The DJ announced it was time for the bride and groom speeches. Ethan went first, charming the crowd with stories of how they met and his vision for their future. Then Vanessa took the microphone, the weight of the truth propelling her forward. She looked out at the sea of faces, friends, family, colleagues, all smiling expectantly. Her gaze found Rebecca, who gave her an almost imperceptible nod of support. "When I met Ethan," Vanessa began, her voice clear and unwavering, "I thought I had found someone who valued honesty as much as I do. Today, I've discovered how wrong I was." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Ethan's smile faltered. "A toast to honesty." The ballroom fell silent as Vanessa's words hung in the air. Ethan's expression shifted from confusion to alarm, his hand reaching for hers beneath the table. She moved it away, standing straighter as she continued. "Marriage should be built on truth," she said, her voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. "On complete trust and transparency. When I agreed to marry Ethan, I believed that's what we had." She paused, making eye contact with several guests. "I was wrong." From the corner of her eye, she saw Ethan's father lean forward, whispering urgently to his son. Margaret Palmer's face had drained of color. "I've learned something valuable today," Vanessa continued, raising her champagne glass. "Sometimes the most important truth is the one we reveal to ourselves. The truth that we deserve better than half-hearted devotion and carefully crafted lies." Ethan stood abruptly. "Vanessa, what are you doing?" he hissed. "This isn't the place." "Actually, it's exactly the place," she countered, her voice gaining strength. "I invited everyone here to witness a union. Instead, they'll witness something more powerful. Self-respect." She turned back to the stunned crowd. "I'd like to propose a toast. Not to love or marriage, but to honesty. The guest that always arrives eventually, even when uninvited." She raised her glass higher. "And to new beginnings." Several guests hesitantly lifted their glasses, confusion evident on their faces. Others exchanged worried glances. In the back, Rebecca sat motionless, eyes fixed on Vanessa with what looked like a mixture of admiration and regret. "Vanessa, you're making a scene," Ethan said through clenched teeth. "Whatever this is about, we can discuss it privately." "Like you privately discussed our relationship with Juliana?" Vanessa asked, loud enough for the nearest tables to hear. "Or the women before her? The ones who overlapped with Rebecca and then with me?" A collective gasp rippled through the room. Dominic closed his eyes briefly, as if he'd been expecting this. Olivia whispered something to her husband, nodding knowingly. "I don't know what you're talking about," Ethan said, but his flushed face betrayed him. "I think you do." Vanessa removed her wedding band, placing it deliberately on the table between them. "You've been living a double life since before I met you. Rebecca was kind enough to show me the evidence." All eyes turned to Rebecca, who didn't flinch under the scrutiny. Ethan's expression darkened as he spotted her. "You did this," he accused. "You couldn't stand that I moved on, so you poisoned Vanessa against me with lies." "The only lies here are yours, Ethan," Rebecca replied calmly. "I simply showed her the truth you've hidden from everyone." Vanessa's father stood now, bewildered but protective. "Someone explain what's happening," he demanded. "What's happening, Dad, is that I'm choosing myself," Vanessa said, her voice breaking slightly for the first time. "I'm sorry for the spectacle, for the expense, for the disappointment. But I'm not sorry for refusing to begin a marriage based on deception." She turned to address the guests directly. "The reception will continue. The food and music you came to enjoy are still here. Consider it a celebration of authenticity instead of matrimony." She smiled sadly. "As for me, I won't be staying. I have a life to reclaim." With that, Vanessa walked deliberately toward the exit. A path cleared for her as stunned guests stepped aside. She passed Priya, who squeezed her hand in silent support. She passed Ethan's parents, noting Margaret's expression of resigned acknowledgement she had known all along. And finally, she passed Rebecca, who stood respectfully as Vanessa approached. "Thank you," Vanessa whispered. "Be happier than I was," Rebecca replied. In the grand foyer, Vanessa paused before the ornate mirror where she had checked her veil hours earlier. The woman who looked back at her now seemed different, stronger, clearer-eyed. She removed the veil, draping it carefully over a nearby chair. Then, gathering the skirt of her gown, she walked out the massive doors and into the evening air, where the setting sun painted the sky in shades of possibility. Behind her, raised voices erupted as Ethan followed her out, demanding explanations, making promises and excuses in the same breath. But Vanessa continued walking, her steps growing more confident with each moment of distance she placed between herself and the life she had almost accepted. In her purse was a hotel key, arranged days earlier when her doubts had crystallized into certainty, and a one-way ticket for the following morning. Destination, anywhere but here. The details could wait. For now, the only direction that mattered was forward. The path forward. 15 months later, Vanessa stood on the balcony of her apartment in Santiago, Chile, watching the Andean sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. The air carried the faint scent of jasmine from the potted plants she'd arranged along the railing. A small garden in the sky, as she liked to call it. "Tea's ready," called a warm voice from inside. Joaquin emerged with 2 steaming mugs, his dark curls catching the last rays of sunlight. "Penny for your thoughts?" Vanessa smiled, accepting the offered cup. "Just reflecting. It's been exactly a year since I moved here." "The best year of my life," Joaquin said simply, leaning against the railing beside her. Their meeting had been serendipitous. Vanessa, 3 months into her self-imposed sabbatical, had been volunteering at an architectural restoration project when Joaquin, a local historical preservationist, had been assigned as her mentor. Their friendship had blossomed naturally into something deeper, built on a foundation neither had experienced before: complete transparency. "I got another email from Priya," Vanessa said, sipping her tea. "She says Ethan's engaged again." Joaquin studied her face. "How does that make you feel?" Vanessa considered the question. Concerned for her, whoever she is. "Grateful it's not me." She set down her mug. "Also determined to do something I've been considering for months." Inside, she retrieved her laptop and returned to the balcony, opening her email. The draft had been sitting there for weeks, a letter addressed to Ethan's new fiancé. Not spiteful or warning, but an invitation to connect if she ever needed someone who understood. Vanessa read through it once more, then decisively pressed send. "That looked important," Joaquin observed. "Just closing a chapter properly," Vanessa replied, echoing Ethan's words from what felt like a lifetime ago. "Speaking of which, I've made a decision about the job offer." The prestigious architecture firm in Santiago had approached her 3 months earlier, impressed by her volunteer work and the portfolio she'd built during her time abroad. The position would mean putting down roots, committing to this new life she'd created. "I'm going to accept it," she said. "This place feels like home now." Joaquin's face lit up, but he contained his reaction. "Are you sure? Your firm in Boston has been asking you to come back." "I'm sure," Vanessa said with conviction. The woman who nearly married Ethan would have gone back, played it safe, followed the expected path. "But I'm not her anymore." They sat in companionable silence as darkness fell and the city lights began to sparkle below them. Vanessa thought about the journey of the past year, the painful months of self-recrimination, the gradual rebuilding of her confidence, the unexpected joy of discovering who she could be when freed from others' expectations. Her phone chimed with a message from Rebecca. They had maintained a surprising friendship, bonded by shared experience and mutual respect. The text contained a photo of Rebecca with her new partner, standing proudly before their recently opened design studio in Chicago. "Living well is the best victory," the message read. "Thank you for showing me how." Vanessa smiled, remembering their last conversation 6 months ago, when Rebecca had called seeking encouragement to leave her stable corporate job and strike out on her own. How strange that they had each given the other a kind of freedom neither had found alone. "I was thinking," Joaquin said, interrupting her thoughts, "about that community center design you've been sketching. The foundation board meets next week. Would you consider presenting your ideas? They're looking for something visionary." Vanessa felt a familiar spark of excitement. The project, reimagining abandoned buildings as cultural spaces in underserved neighborhoods, had become her passion project. Combining her architectural skills with her newfound commitment to authenticity in all aspects of life. "I'd love to," she said. "On one condition. You tell me honestly what you think of the latest revisions." Joaquin laughed. "Always with the truth stipulations." "It's my non-negotiable," she replied with a smile. Later that night, as Joaquin slept beside her, Vanessa opened the small journal she kept by her bedside. On the anniversary of her almost wedding, she had begun the tradition of writing a letter to her former self. This year's entry was brief but powerful. "Dear Vanessa, you were right to walk away. Right to trust that voice inside you that whispered something wasn't right. The path hasn't always been easy, but it has always been true. The woman you are becoming thanks you for your courage, for choosing truth over comfort, for believing that love, real love, never requires you to accept less than complete honesty. Today, 1 year from the day you arrived in Santiago, you are building a life that needs no embellishment or careful editing to be beautiful. You are loved authentically and loved the same way in return. This is what freedom feels like. Remember it, cherish it. Continue to live it every day, with pride and gratitude, the woman you dared to become. She closed the journal and placed it back on the nightstand. Outside, Santiago hummed with nightlife. Inside, in this space she had created for herself, Vanessa felt the quiet certainty that comes from living truthfully, not just with others, but most importantly with herself. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities for growth. But tonight, she rested in the knowledge that whatever came next, she would face it with the same clarity and courage that had led her away from a beautiful wedding into a truly beautiful life.